Hey there, Wargamers, and welcome to another POV painting tutorial video. In this video, I'm going to go over how I do a sandy base and some added gore effects. Let's get started. Okay, so starting off, we're going to go to our texture paint here. We're going to get a nice amount on our brush here and just kind of go at it with the brush. I haven't really glued in the model here. I just kind of use the texture paint to do that for me. We're kind of just trying to move the paint around here, trying to avoid the boots of the model. And next up, we're going to take our sculpting tool and just kind of use this to mess around with the texture of the texture paint and just kind of get it to where we are happy with it. And this is something I like to do continuously as it's drying. I've just found that it seems to create more unique kind of textures for the base. Texture paint seems to kind of take a while to dry, usually about an hour to 2 hours for me usually. So give it ample time to dry and we will move on to our next step here shortly. Alright, starting off we're going to go ahead and switch over to skeleton bone, and this is going to be the base coat for our base here. And as usual, we're going to go for a touch of water to thin the paint down, and we're going to aim for 2 to 3 thin coats on the base. And as you can see, you get pretty good coverage and a nice light beige color out of the skeleton bone. And once we have a few good coats on that, we're going to go ahead and switch over to our wash. I chose the soft tone for this one because I don't really want a super heavy wash, just kind of something subtle, so this is what I chose to go with. And we're going to go ahead and coat the entirety of the base with this wash and give it a good amount of time to dry, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now that our wash is dry, I kind of wanted to add a little bit of a little carnage to this guy. So I have a arm from one of our bolt action minis here. So I'm going to kind of chop this up a little bit. And we're going to glue this onto the base now, and we will paint this separately. And we're going to go in with the hobby knife here and just kind of give off the impression of battle damage and wounds on the arm here. And if you have extra bits like this, it's a great way to add personality and flair to your minis. And with the hobby knife here, I'm pushing into the hand here pretty deep, just trying to add the impression of wounds and cuts onto the fingers. And now we'll switch over to our file here and just kind of smooth out some of those edges where we want the wounds to kind of look deeper. Once you're about satisfied with your work there, you can go ahead and switch over to some super glue for this. And we're just going to go ahead and plop this right in front of his feet here. And with any piece, before I glue it, I like to kind of fit it onto the model first before I glue it, just to kind of give myself a roadmap in my head of where I should put the glue. Alright, once you have that on there, give that a few minutes to dry, and we will switch over to the painting step. Moving on to the arm, I'm going to start out with some Commando green here, and this is going to be basically the clothing sleeve of the arm. And you will need a few thin coats of the Commando green to get a full opaque color onto the sleeve here. Moving on to Elven Flesh, we're going to switch over to our skin tone here for our severed arm, I guess. And this is pretty much just going to go on the hand of the model. And again, you will need two thin coats for this one, just to be sure that you get a totally opaque color out of it. And I have a bit of a darker skin tone for the model itself, so I wanted to choose something that was a little bit different. So the Elven Flesh, I figured, kind of contrasted well with the darker skin tone of the model. And next we're going to switch to more of a crimson red. We're going to go with Crusted Sore. And for this, we're just going to use this as kind of blood splatterings around the arm. And here the main areas you want to hit are the severed part of the arm, I guess. And the I decided there was a wound on the hand itself as well, so I went ahead and did a little extra blood on the hand as well. Next up, we are going to switch over to Glistening Blood, and this is going to give us a little bit of variation in the blood colors that we have placed down with Crusted Sore earlier. So this one has a bit more of a satin finish, so it'll kind of shine a little bit more, and it'll also be a little bit brighter as well. And as you can see with this, I'm kind of just hitting more of the wound areas and anywhere you think that fresh blood would be. And now we're actually going to pull back out our sculpting tool, and I'm going to put our cultist here in the holder, and we're going to use the glistening blood and the sculpting tool and just kind of hit your brush against the sculpting tool, and this will give you a kind of blood splat kind of effect. It's a little bit hard to see from this angle, but you just kind of have to trust that paint's being applied, and in the end you'll see the result. Now it's very subtle, but doing that will add red kind of specks throughout the entire base, which just adds a little bit more to the gore effect. Moving over to a couple of finishing touches, I have one of the wasteland tufts here, or swamp, I think it's a swamp tuft actually. We're going to go ahead and just glue that in place here. It's always a little bit easier with the tweezers. You can also do this with your finger, but I found that whenever I do it with my finger, I kind of crush it and ruin the shape of the tuft. Moving on to a couple finishing touches, we're going to go ahead and switch over to matte black. And with this, we're just going to hit the rim of the base with a couple layers until we have a nice opaque black rim. And this is why I like to do this step last, is because you can kind of be a little bit messier with the previous steps and not have to worry about continuously painting over the work you just did. Once your layer of matte black is dry, go ahead and switch over to your matte varnish. Go ahead and give this a touch of water and hit the entire base with a decently thick layer of this. And the only area that you should avoid with the matte varnish is the swamp tuft. Alright, and with our final shots, I think we have achieved a pretty decent sand base with some interesting gore effects. This is definitely a quick base to do and easy to replicate for your entire army. I hope you found this video useful for your sand bases and your gore effects. Thanks for watching.